Welcome everybody to another prison news special episode of Lockdown 23 in 1. That's right, I got another grip of shocking prison stories coming your way. So let's get into it. If you enjoyed this type of content, all things lockup and crime related, then this is where you want to be. Hit that like, subscribe, notification bell before you leave, and check out my playlist with many more videos for you to start watching today. Now the first story's short, it doesn't go into too much detail, but it just goes to show you that anybody can be capable of sexual assault in prison. And it's still happening to this day, like I say all the time. People are fighting for their life and their cheeks in prison. It says an inmate at the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center is charged in connection to a physical and sexual assault, according to the Richland County Sheriff's Department. It says a 24-year-old Calvin Tucker is charged with criminal sexual conduct in the first degree. 24 years old, and he's in there sexually assaulting his cellmate. Probably ain't even got that much time. Now it says the victim, another inmate, had to call to report the assault to his mother. Probably because the guards didn't even care. Man, can you imagine having to call your mom and tell her that someone just did something like that to you? Man, I can't even imagine. But if I were to guess, he probably had nowhere else to turn. That was his last hope, and thankfully, it helped because the investigators determined that Tucker was responsible for this incident, and if I were to guess, they probably separated him and put him in a different prison. But that's about it for that case. Homeboy's probably going to be facing another 20-30 years behind this assault. His life is as good as gone at 24 years old. Now the next story, we're traveling down to Maryland. There ain't no photos of inmates for this one, but just recently, it says an inmate housed at the Maryland prison was killed after being stabbed to death by another prisoner in his cell. It says Marvin Brown, 23, has been identified as the person found dead inside of a Western Correctional Institution in Cumberland. It says at approximately 9:30 a.m., Maryland State Police troopers were called to the facility to investigate an inmate death, where they found Brown unresponsive with multiple puncture wounds. I mean, I read these stories and it's pretty clean and cut, right? But really put yourself in these people's shoes and you'll realize the horror in it, man. Just imagine sitting in a cell. Dude was probably writing a letter, drinking some coffee. Next thing you know, someone runs in there, stabs you to death. And you know there's a point in time where you're sitting there getting stabbed knowing that you're about to go to the upper room. Terrifying, ladies and gentlemen. Stay the hell out of prison. Next up, another short briefing coming from Pulaski County. It says an inmate in the Pulaski County Jail died after he was involved in a fight with another inmate. Daryl Lee faces second-degree murder charges. The sheriff has not released the identity of the victim. But let's take a closer look at Daryl Lee, man. Does he look like a killer to y'all? He looks to me like he could be a cheerful, funny guy. Someone interesting to play cards with. Just don't mess with something that he loves the most. What could that be? Let's see. Jail cameras captured the fight, and investigators say that Lee told them the fight started over a remote controller to the TV. They say that Lee claimed he had punched the inmate a few times after the inmate got in his face, but the investigators say Lee punched the inmate 4 times in the face, head, and neck. That inmate lost consciousness and fell to the floor. Jail staff took him to General Leonard Wood Hospital and later airlifted him to Mercy Springfield, where he eventually died. This is a prime example of a lot of stories I bring your way. Individuals getting into a normal fist fight and the other inmate ends up dying unexpectedly. A lot of these guys, they never meant for that to happen, but in prison and jail, look, it's hard for you to back down from a fight. Typically, when someone gets in your face like that, man, it's swing first, ask questions later. And a lot of these guys never in a million years thought that they'd be killing someone. I can't even imagine having like a 2-year sentence, man. I'm ready to go home. I get into a little fight. Dude dies. I'm doing the next 20 to 30 years in prison when all I had to do was walk away. Right? That's probably what a lot of these guys are saying to themselves after the fact. If only I just walked the fuck away. But the article doesn't break down exactly why Mr. Lee's in here, but I can guarantee he's going to be in there for a lot longer now. Next up, we're traveling down to Pennsylvania. An inmate at SEI Phoenix in Skip Pack Township with convictions of aggravated assault and reckless endangerment has been charged with first-degree murder and third-degree murder by Pennsylvania State Police in his alleged role for the beating death of inmate Guru, 67, in his cell on Sunday morning. Officers immediately began CPR, which was continued by arriving Plymouth Ambulance EMS personnel, but unfortunately, despite the life-saving measures, Guru was pronounced dead at 10:24 a.m. According to Montgomery County District Attorney Kevin R. Steele in Pennsylvania, Dwight Williams, 42, of South Carolina, will remain in SCI Phoenix and will have no bail for first-degree murder. Now it says upon their arrival of the cell, it was apparent to the medics that the unresponsive individual had been beaten on the head. They observed blood and bruising all over his head. Also a shoe print on the victim's face. Montgomery County detectives and Pennsylvania State Police began a joint homicide investigation into Guru's death. They reviewed surveillance video and found that Guru's cellmate was not in his cell at the time of the incident. At 9:12 a.m., Guru is seen leaving his cell to fill his water bottle across the cell block and then returned straight away. 4 minutes later, 9:16 a.m., Williams can be seen entering Guru's cell, then exiting at 9:25 a.m., less than 10 minutes later. Now 4 more minutes later at 9:29 a.m., Williams is seen entering his own cell, and a red substance can be seen on the bottom of his left sneaker. Williams leaves his cell a few minutes later holding a brown paper bag and tries to get another inmate to discard the bag immediately. But the cell block had already been locked down, police said. And that's another thing, man, when it comes down to gangs. Just imagine if someone, someone just did some work like this and then they want to hand you the weapons. You get rid of them. Next thing you know, you're facing 20 years as well. Accessory. Investigators recovered the paper bag and found it contained a white Fila sneaker. And y'all already know that that was the sneaker he was wearing with the blood on it. The investigation also found out that another inmate had allegedly witnessed the attack on Guru. He looked into the window of the victim's cell while the cell door was closed and observed the inmate stomping on the victim's chest. The coroner's office says the cause of death was blunt impact injuries, and the manner of death was homicide. According to court documents, Williams has 2 active cases in the common pleas level, including one for felony drug violations that occurred while incarcerated. So this guy's definitely in the mix, man. He's in there getting felony drug violations while in jail. In May 2022, Williams was given a 5 to 10 year prison sentence in Philadelphia court for felony charges of first-degree aggravated assault and carrying firearms without a license, as well as 1 to 2 years in prison for misdemeanor reckless endangerment charge. He landed at SCI Phoenix in September 2022, and that's where he eventually ran into Guru, who was serving a life sentence. So this just goes to show you that it doesn't matter how old you are, because Guru was 67 years old. Williams was 42, way younger. No matter how old you are in prison, it doesn't matter. If you get into the mix with the wrong person, you can get got just like anybody else. And second of all, this goes to show you that not all lifers are the ones in there killing people. Guru was a lifer, and his life ended up getting taken by someone that many people would consider a short timer. 5 to 10 years, yeah, that's a stretch, but nothing compared to a lot of people in there, right? So now, if you're to ask me, Dwight Matthew Williams is probably going to be doing time in prison for the rest of his life. Now, it doesn't go into detail on why this altercation took place, but I can't help but to think, every time a lifer gets killed, I feel like maybe he died because of who he killed. Someone found out who he was, where he was at, and it was a wrap. Now, last but not least, number 3. You remember that inmate saying that he walked past the cell, looked in, and seen homeboy stomping on him? There will always be someone in that cell block that's seen something and they're going to tell it. Guaranteed. I call them little special housemen. Housemen clean up the cell block, but the special housemen go above and beyond. Clean up the trash in the cell block, not to mention the inmates. If they're doing things that they don't like, man, they will drop dime on them quicker than ever. And it doesn't have to be murder. A lot of these guys, they'll tell on someone for using a cell phone, buying contraband, smoking a little something, and next thing you know, their cell's getting shaken down, but nobody knows how they knew. It's because another inmate probably seen you, smelled it, walked past the cell, took a glance in, and they're working for the staff, not legitimately. But they might get kicked a couple commissary items or extra trays. It happens all the time, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to do dirt in prison, always remember, it ain't just the COs or the cameras watching you. Certain inmates are too. And chances are they don't like you, man. They're ready to get you out of there. Now next up, we're traveling down to Oklahoma, to Allen Gamble Correctional Center in Holdenville. Very short, but has some juicy meat and potatoes to it. It says, with no correctional officers nearby, a prisoner ran into an unlocked office looking for a phone after a knife fight that left an inmate bleeding out. The prisoner called 911 3 times, and he said in one of the calls, "No guards, no guards, we need help immediately," the inmate told the dispatcher. According to the recording, one call started at 10:46 a.m. There was a brawl involving prisoners affiliated with the neighborhood Crips gang. The fight ended after one of the inmates stabbed a 35-year-old prisoner with a homemade weapon. A correctional officer didn't call 911 until 11:03 a.m. 17 minutes after the first emergency call from the prisoner came in. There was a correctional officer present during the fight, but they were on the opposite side of the unit conducting a count. Brian Daw, national director of One Voice United, said that understaffing is the corrections industry's biggest crisis. This can cause life-threatening situations in prisons. He goes on to say that what people don't realize is there's no 911 in jail. We are the 911. If we don't come, ain't no one coming, and someone's gonna die. That's crazy, right? Ain't no more 911 in lockup. Now, that's the end of the story. There ain't too much more details on it, but it's gonna lead me into my next one. You heard how the inmates were calling 911 because nobody was helping them, right? It has gotta be bad for an inmate to do that. But let's travel back to South Carolina, alright? It says, inmate caught trying to reconnect his contraband cell phone after it was disabled by prison. Now, just like the last story, when there was an issue in the cell block, they call 911. Well, who do you think this guy's going to try to call to reactivate his phone? When the Lee Correctional Facility inmate called T-Mobile's tech support, oh man, no he didn't. The representative informed the inmate that the phone could not be reactivated because it has been associated with a contraband device. It says video released by the South Carolina Department of Corrections showcases audio from an inmate at the Lee Correctional Facility while on the phone with T-Mobile's technical support.
Tell me exactly what your computer is telling you.
Yes, this is the notice that I have right here. T-Mobile has been ordered to disable service to the account because it has been associated with a contraband device. Questions about the discontinuation of service can be addressed to South Carolina Department of Corrections, and there's a hotline given. So that's all.
Well, thank you, sir. And what can I do to get it cut back on?
You can simply go to T-Mobile store and ask them how can you retrieve the account. That's all I can suggest actually as of now.
Unreal. You know, you ain't got nothing else better to do than call customer support. It makes me wonder how many of these customer support calls are from inmates and they have no idea. Thank you, sir, for paying your bill on time. We want to give you some free bonus points. We're going to make sure you're extra covered. Inmate leaves his cell like he's running a lawn care business. Not to mention, I've been covering stories of inmates running scams from websites on a contraband cell phone in a cell. As technology progresses, trust and believe the contraband will as well. It's a crazy world in prison, I'm here to tell you. Next up, this one is not coming from prison, but the individual is definitely going to be going to prison. A former food service director for an Illinois school district was sentenced to 9 years in prison after pleading guilty to stealing $1.5 million worth of chicken wings. Chicken wings, man, come on. You know that someone was going to get a red flag by that because nobody's pumping chicken wings with the bone in them to students. I've never seen that. Vera Lydell, 68, was working for Harvey School District 152 when she placed orders for chicken wings with a food provider for the district. She was accused of ordering more than 11,000 cases of chicken wings from the food provider and picking up the order in a district cargo van. Now, this is the crazier part. Schools were closed during this time because of the pandemic, but the districts were still sending out meal kits to these kids even though they're not in school. But not Miss Lydell. She was charged with theft and operating a criminal enterprise in January 2023. The scheme was discovered when the district's business manager found the invoices for the poultry during a routine mid-year audit last year. But according to the court documents, which noted that chicken wings typically would not be served to students since they contain bones. Exactly what I just said. I didn't even read the full article yet. But man, can you imagine being in school and they're serving chicken wings on the bone? Man, I ain't never missing that day. Hey bro, let's skip class. I got some honeys at the house waiting for us. Not today, bro. It's chicken on a bone. Can't miss that cafeteria meeting. The audit revealed that the district's food service department had exceeded its annual budget by $300,000. With half of the school year left, according to prosecutors. Lydell had worked for the Harvey School District 152 for more than a decade, but now she's going to be serving pretty much a decade in prison. I wonder who got them as well. Was she just eating all of them? Feeding it to the family? I understand times is tough, man. Them wings can be expensive. She could have been selling them wholesale to restaurants. Who knows? Either way, if I were to guess, she's going to be getting in the mix in the penitentiary with the food as well. Now next up, we're traveling down to Mississippi. It says a lawyer, Daniel Dale, was arrested Thursday after sheriffs in Hinds County said he tried to smuggle drugs, including cell phones and a digital scale, cigarettes, and cigar wraps, into a local detention center in an alleged conspiracy with 2 detainees. Man, oh man, look at this guy. He makes Better Call Saul look like a pro. Prosecutors said when Dale came into the prison, he would pretend to be meeting with clients, but in fact, he was hauling drugs and other contraband items into the jail. Now, this is the crazier part. Inside of a silver briefcase. Let me guess, it was probably handcuffed to his hand as well. He's got the nuke codes in that jank. Ah, man, why would you ever bring anything contraband-wise inside of a silver briefcase? Everybody's gonna wonder what the hell's in that thing. Probably because the case was made out of metal. And he thought going through the metal detector with that wouldn't ring no alarms for the most part. It's metal container, man, that's all it is. Don't question what's inside it. But someone doing their job did. But it seems like Dale's attorney days are probably over. But that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you enjoyed today's rundown of recent prison news. But stay tuned, I got plenty more content coming your way. And just a quick little update on my buddy Grizzy. He was sentenced again to like 1.5 years, I believe. And when he gets out, he will be completely off of probation for the first time in over 20 years. So I'm excited for him, man. Hopefully he can get his shit right. He should be walking out of there within the next 10 months or so, I believe. He might be short enough to where they don't even send him to prison again. You know, Grizzy is a perfect example of life on an installment plan. When you're on probation and you keep messing up over and over and over again, I promise you they will keep sending you to prison over and over and over again until you get it right or until you finish probation. But I'm out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Until the next time, as always, y'all be easy, be safe, and more importantly than anything, stay free.